and it was a lot of fun.
Where all did you go?
Well, we started out in Kings Island, and from there we went to New York City and Boston and New Orleans and Dallas, Seattle, and ended up in L.A., and it was super time.
Everybody know who Major Ogilvy was?
Well, I don't know. I think everybody knew who Coach Bryant was, but I don't know about Major Ogilvy or Alabama.
Let's talk about the Tide. Your senior season, how does it look?
Well, I think it looks like we got a lot of hard work ahead of us. Certainly we do. We graduated a lot of people last year, not only great football players, but great leaders, and we're going to have to replace a lot of those things.
You got a lot of freshmen and young guys pressing you. Is that going to make you try just a little bit extra hard?
Well, I don't think really we have a first team set every year we come in here. Everything starts new, so that's kind of the way I look at it anyway. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people pressing me and pressing others as well.
What do you think about the season and the team spirit? Is everybody fired up and ready to go?
Well, I think everybody's attitude's good, and I think we recognize the fact that we got a lot of hard work against us. And as far as the schedule goes, we got a very extremely tough schedule, and one that's going to require a lot of hard work if we're going to be successful.
There was a room full of Republicans from all across Alabama. They were welcomed by Montgomery Mayor Emory Fulmer, who told them that he intends to give Governor Reagan his full support.
I'm going to use every ounce that's in me. I feel like my country's in danger, that I am just called to do this. I'm going to do everything I know how to do to help elect Ronald Reagan as president.
Fulmer told the group that the Democrats have abandoned the free enterprise system and have turned to more government programs that are wasteful. He cited the CETA program as an example. Others to address the group included both GOP Senate candidates Jeremiah Denton and Armistead Selden. Congressman Jack Edwards of Mobile was named state chairman of the campaign to elect Reagan. He spoke briefly about the Democratic convention in New York.
Oh, I thought it was a fiasco, all the way from Willie Nelson singing the national anthem to Hubert Horatio Hornblower, as referred to by President Carter, to Teddy Kennedy's virtual snub of the president after he was nominated. To me, is just it's a sad state of affairs, and I think it bodes well for the Republican Party. If we can pull our act together, if we can move forward, as I believe we will, I think we're going to have a great victory in November.
Edwards says the Democratic campaign will be weakened because of differences between Senator Ted Kennedy and President Carter. He says those differences will be an advantage for the Republican Party. Edwards was asked by reporters what the priorities of his party will be between now and November.
Well, I think one of the things we need to talk about, probably as much as anything, is our military posture. The failures of the Carter administration in dealing with the military over the last 4 years, the way our preparedness has gone down. Of course, the other one is the question of the economy, inflation, recession, all balled up into one. Unemployment's growing, and I think that the people are sick and tired of it. They need to return to the basics, and I think that's what the Republican Party offers.
Edwards says with a lot of hard work by his party members, there will be a Republican in the White House in January. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
Up the banks of this river. The combination of the crosses symbolize the union of those two countries. The cotton plant indicates the source of our nation's wealth, while the 13 red and white stripes ceremony up by the pavilion, if you'd like to walk. Hey,
Saturday in the park, I think it was the 4th of July. Saturday in the park, I think it was the 4th of July. People dancing, people laughing, a man selling ice cream, singing a
We took a look at the most heated race for national office, that of U.S. Senate. That's the seat now held by Donald Stewart, and the incumbent is far ahead in 1980 campaign contributions, with $299,000 worth reported in this disclosure form covering the second quarter of this year. In the volumes of paperwork submitted by Stewart, it listed nearly 100 contributions from political action committees alone, more than 10 times the number of PAC contributions reported by any other candidate. The one candidate who had received and spent the least is Mrs. Frank Stewart, who reported a $600 contribution from herself, which was used as the qualifying fee to enter the Democratic race. Other Democrats running for this post include Finest St. John, with contributions totaling just more than $7,000. With the Republicans, Armistead Selden is the breadwinner, $151,000 in contributions, including a $500 contribution from former Governor John Patterson and another $1,000 contribution from Montgomery Mayor Emery Farmer. But Republican Jeremiah Denton collected $1,000 from First Lady Bobby James, part of the $44,000 he's received this year. The only U.S. Senate candidate that has no disclosure form in his file at the Secretary of State's office is Jim Folsom Jr., but officials say if his forms come in the mail with today's postmark, they'll be accepted. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Prattville officials say Crooms was fired because he abused sick leave and broke 2 other city regulations by carrying a gun on duty and refusing to shave off a mustache. Crooms says he was fired because he filed a discrimination complaint against the city after he was passed over for a promotion in his department. The city says the job was temporary and Crooms would have been considered for the post had it been a permanent position. Crooms says he needed a weapon while on duty because radio operators are left alone at the department during the night. The former radio dispatcher charged that he was the only person in the department wearing a mustache, and the city passed that regulation and only aimed it at him because of his discrimination suit. Prattville attorneys T.O. McDowell and Joe Espy denied that. The hearing before federal magistrate Louis Gwaltney is expected to continue for several days. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the federal court.
Police stumbled upon the Vogel brothers May 30th last year. Their car was parked near an abandoned airstrip, and when they saw police, they quickly slammed the lid to their car's trunk. Inside the car were a police scanner, walkie-talkies, and 3 duffel bags. Police arrested Robert Vogel on a littering charge and opened the duffel bags. Inside, they found marijuana and other controlled substances. The Vogel's lawyer, John McGee, says the search of the duffel bags was illegal. But the state's attorney says the suspicious circumstances provided probable cause for the search, even though McGee says there was no evidence a crime had been committed. McGee also says his client's 50 and 20-year sentences are unusually harsh. Both Vogels were convicted on separate counts of possessing 14 different controlled substances, and the judge ordered that some of those sentences were to be served consecutively. The state's attorney argues that consecutive sentences are appropriate since each drug by itself constitutes a violation. McGee says all the forms together form one violation of the Controlled Substances Act, and so they should be serving one sentence. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
That is the intention, or was the intention of the and express your gratitude, welcome, and appreciation.
Office down there this morning, and it was Honorable Larry Dumas who read I'll appreciate it. Honorable Larry.
The arrests are the result of efforts by the Attorney General's Welfare Fraud Task Force, the Department of Pensions and Security, and the Mobile County Sheriff's Office. Attorney General Charles Graddick says 201 people are charged with using false pretense to obtain food stamps, aid to dependent children, and family daycare benefits totaling $306,540. He says none of today's arrests involve the reportedly widespread welfare abuse during Hurricane Frederick's emergency relief efforts last year. But he says Pensions and Security Commissioner Gary Cooper has turned over to him nearly 600 cases of suspected hurricane-related food stamp fraud. He says as many as 5,000 cases could be forthcoming.
We are finding, since welfare has gone totally unchecked since its beginning, that it's probably an area of more abuse than any other area in our state and in our country.
Graddick says in addition to the Mobile crackdown, efforts to control welfare fraud will be concentrated in the areas of Montgomery and Birmingham. He says obtaining welfare benefits fraudulently is a felony and carries a possible jail term of 1 to 10 years.
Attorney General Graddick says the issuance of the warrants today marks the end of Phase 1 in a concentrated effort to eliminate welfare fraud. Reporting from Mobile, George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
Mayor Fulmer proposed an ordinance to increase the city's beer tax from 1 cent to 3 cents per can as a means of generating the additional $750,000. City Finance Director Sam Austin told the committee members the mayor made the recommendation as an alternative to cutting services and deleting employee pay raises. However, some of the committee members are opposed to putting an additional tax on beer, but rather suggested a possible tax on soft drinks instead. Yet still others were against a tax altogether. The committee took no immediate action on the proposed tax levy and decided to discuss other revenue alternatives. Councilman Joe Reed suggested a fire protection fee as an alternative, but no action was taken on the matter. The committee covered the entire 33-page budget and voted on a number of proposals introduced by committee members. One was a motion by Councilman Reed, which stipulated that federal revenue sharing funds would not be used to pay employee salaries. However, the motion was defeated by a vote of 3 to 2. Councilman Reed introduced several other motions which were also defeated. As the meeting concluded, Reed told the other committee members he would not support any decision made concerning the proposed budget, and he accused some of the members of already having their minds made up before the budget hearing began. More budget hearings are scheduled, with possible discussion on the subject at Tuesday's council meeting. From City Hall, Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
Rhodes has set a high goal for his first-year team at Andalusia, that being a trip to the 3A state playoffs. The Bulldogs are part of what may be the most highly competitive region in the state. Andalusia's schedule includes home dates with Charles Henderson High School of Troy and Opp High School. The Bulldogs must play Elba High School on the road. Any of these have a chance at the region title. What will Andalusia have to do to win it?
Well, I think that, first of all, we've got to be very sound in our kicking game. I think that goes without saying. I think, second of all, that we've got to minimize our offensive mistakes. We don't have the type of talent where we can afford to lay the ball on the ground 4 or 5 times a game, throw a bunch of interceptions. And the third thing that we've got to be able to do, I think that we've got to play great defense in the sense that we've got to be a big play type defense. We've got to force turnovers. We've got to, get sudden change situations. If we do those 3 things, well, then I think we've got a chance to have a pretty good season.
How's practice been going?
I think overall pretty good. You know how practice is, never as good as a coach wants it to be.
Yeah.
But overall, our kids have worked pretty hard, and we've gotten a lot of things in. And really, 2 days are tough for anybody. But our kids really responded pretty well.
During the state championship years, the school adopted the name the University of Andalusia. Football was not just a sport then, but an obsession. Rick Rhodes hopes to bring back memories of those glory years at Andalusia High School this fall. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
The 3-page motion is now in federal court in Birmingham. District Attorney Jimmy Evans says it's another one of his efforts to secure the information he needs.
Norman, we have to get a copy of that transcript. We want to study the transcript to determine whether or not we think we'll be successful on an appeal to the United States Fifth Circuit in New Orleans. And of course, we have to file a written motion to get a copy of the transcript of the hearing on the petition of the grand jury for that evidence up in Birmingham. And after we get the transcript and we study it, if we feel like we got a shot at in New Orleans reversing the judge on it, then we're going to take an appeal to the Fifth Circuit, both on the petition of the grand jury, the denial of that petition that our grand jury filed up there, and also on the order that the judge issued, ordered me not to talk about what went on in his chambers.
What's in that transcript that you want? You already know, don't you?
Well, I have a recall of everything that went on in the proceeding. I want to check the actual printed word against my memory recall to see if certain things are in that transcript, and if they are, I think we got a good chance on appeal, and we're going to take it.
At this point, it's not known when Judge McFadden will rule on the recent motion filed by District Attorney Jimmy Evans. Courthouse observers say this may end up before the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the Montgomery County Courthouse.
State and local authorities are investigating the possibility of an auto theft ring involving vehicles driven from Detroit to Lowndes County. Though FBI officials won't comment, sources confirm that FBI and other agents have questioned Lowndes County citizens about some cars that may have fake titles. One man questioned is Percy Bell, the Lowndes County tax assessor. Bell wasn't in his office today, and when telephoned at his home, his wife said Bell didn't feel like talking. Since authorities started investigating, new cars have been found abandoned in various parts of Lowndes County. 16 cars turned up in one community alone. Sources say investigators have confiscated a van and a luxury car from a Lowndes County official, and that they plan to review county automobile title and tag records. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Remember, janitorial services and this, that, in the last session when we had the large committee here, make more for the way it is in Nashville. I don't know whether
onerous to the city.
owners to the city. Yes, it's just one you had drawn up, it's just that bill.
It follows theirs.
Have you got yours for all of us, Cal?
I asked Frank to go.
The Securities Investors Protection Corporation symbol has been in existence since January 1979, but the corporation has existed for 10 years. Ted Fote says the nonprofit corporation was established 10 years ago by Congress to protect investors and to promote confidence in the securities market. But Fote says there are limitations as to financial guarantees.
At the present time, we may advance up to $100,000 per customer account to pay to protect that customer. Now, there's a further limitation on that. No more than $40,000 of that may be a claim for cash as opposed to a claim for securities. The important thing I think to note on that is that we have pending in Congress now legislation which would increase those levels of protection to $500,000 overall, no more than $100,000 of which may be a claim for cash as opposed to a claim for securities.
Fote says the decline in the liquidation of investment firms reflects an improvement in conditions in the securities industry. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
A public hearing regarding the rate increase request was scheduled for tonight's council meeting, but store district manager Jack Clemens told the council in a letter that after careful consideration he's determined the necessity of indefinitely postponing the rate request. We were unable to reach Clemens by phone for additional comment. In its petition, the company was seeking an October 1st base rate increase from $7.50 to $8.50 for monthly cable service and from $2 to $2.50 for each additional service outlet. The company had cited cost of living increases and increased cost of materials and labor in making its request. Meanwhile, some city council members have had complaints from a number of TV cable subscribers since Store had submitted its request.
Our constituents telling me that they were against this raise at this point in time. They said they wasn't getting the quality of service in the first place. They are tired of the John Wayne type movies, riding off into the sun, Bogart movies and things like that. They want something educational. They want something that can relate to them with national government, city government, comedies, things of that nature.
According to Councilman Bill Nunn, a similar complaint is that subscribers feel there should be more channels to justify the additional charge. Company officials say they don't know when they'll seek the rate increase request again. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
It was a consensus vote, a unanimous vote, and everyone is extremely excited over the prospects of these individuals joining the Alabama Public Service Commission.
What will be the net effect of these changes?
Well, there really will be no particular changes. We're filling positions that were not filled at the time that we have made these acceptance of applications or contracts. The net effect, in our opinion, is going to be better regulation through the Alabama Public Service Commission because of the credentials that we feel like these individuals have. They're extremely qualified individuals and will go to complement the already, what we feel is already qualified staff, however critically on demand.
Members of council, you have a guest you'd like to introduce Mr. Gilmore?
Expect to be years up and about a little bit. Could not make it tonight, but does expect to be back.
President, if so, please come forward.
Approximately 27,000 automobiles on a 5-day period. This council and the city is to be commended, and I congratulate you.
No, not really. Every year's a new year, and every squad's a new squad, and we're treating this one just like any others. We just hope they'll accept the challenge and go out and get after it and play good, hard-nosed football and be competitive. And we're not going to set any goals as far as wins and losses. We just want to be competitive and work hard every week, and things will turn out ever how they should.
What about the strong points for Enterprise this year? Will it be the running game, the passing game as far as offense is concerned?
Well, we are a run-oriented team every year, and certainly for us to be successful, we've got to be able to run the football. We think we have some pretty good running backs coming back, and possibly that could be a strength. We think we're pretty strong in the secondary. We've got 2 out of 3 starters back there. We've got to find some inside linebackers. We've got to find some defensive ends that can do the job. We've got to find some depth in our offensive line. But these are the kind of problems that you face every year, and we just hope some of these youngsters will come through and do the job.
I notice you growing big down here, Coach. You recruit them, you get the parents to feed them all the time. How do you get these guys so big?
Well, we try to get them to do that. We try to get them to feed them and do that sort of thing. But a lot of it is just hard work by the kids. They work on the weights real good, and they like it. They enjoy doing that sort of thing, and they build themselves up. But this is not, some of them may look pretty big too, but some of them are pretty small too.
What St. John is concerned about as a candidate for U.S. Senate is how his name appears on the ballot. The ballot has 2 columns and 2 names per column. St. John's name appears last, following Donald Stewart and Mrs. Frank Stewart. But he claims the Saint in his name is an abbreviation for S-A-I-N-T, and therefore should be listed following Jim Folsom and before Donald Stewart in order to comply with state law. St. John withdrew his threat of legal action because he says he knew it would cost the state about $250,000 to change the ballots. Instead, he says he'll just ask the probate judges in the state to rearrange the order of the names. But even that causes problems. If the probate judges did decide to change the order of the ballots, it would mean a pile of other forms, such as certificate of results, absentee ballots, statements of canvasses, and so on, would also have to be changed. And for Montgomery County alone, that would cost about $10,000. But here enters another logistics problem. There are only 2 printing companies in the state contracted to print ballots. One of them is Brown Printing Company here in Montgomery. A company official says it would take a minimum of 3.5 weeks to reprint the ballots for the 29 counties it serves, and the election is less than 2 weeks away. Another problem. Sample ballots with the original order of candidates have already been printed and passed out, so anyone depending on the sample ballot to find a name would face a different list at the poll if the ballots were reprinted. Even though St. John says he won't press the issue, there's still a legal question about his name possibly being out of alphabetical order. It would violate state law. And as one probate judge official told me, it puts the probate judges between a rock and a hard spot. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
The agency funds projects from all areas of criminal law enforcement, including the courts, prisons, defense, and juvenile programs. Right now, the agency has about 200 active projects, but their future doesn't look good.
We're faced with somewhat of a dilemma right now because Congress has cut us out entirely. Will be no new money beginning in October. Consequently, we have a fund balance of some $300,000 or $400,000. Yet we have the 175 or so projects, and they're all competing for the same dollars. I don't, as far as the President Carter's decision to keep us out of the budget, we never really got a good answer. We got had one contact with the White House that stated that the president didn't seem to think crime was a major issue in this country.
Even though there will be no new money coming in from the federal government, there are leftover funds, and the executive board will have to decide how to spend it. Since there isn't enough money to go around to continue all programs or fund new ones, there's an ongoing battle among members to give priority to their respective areas. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Aid to dependent children would be the largest expenditure in the budget. 65% of the money would be federal funds and 35% would come from the state. Gil Jennings, Associate P&S Commissioner, says state funding includes $6 million in conditional money, and without it, cuts will have to be made in a number of programs. Commissioner Gary Cooper says 200,000 Alabama households are eligible to participate in the Home Energy Assistance Program. The federal program is designed to offset the rising cost of home energy, considered excessive in relation to income. The Pension and Security Board says it supports proposed state legislation allowing judges to order salary garnishments of up to 40% for child support, and it supports another measure that would extend the statute of limitations on determining paternity of illegitimates from 2 to 5 years. The board also needs to approve or disapprove a proposed name change for the department. One being considered is the Department of Human Services. One board member says the proposed name change could create confusion for some clients. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
In enemy territory, American soldiers are stranded in the middle of a river. U.S. helicopters fly in to rescue the troops, but the choppers can't stop in midair, so rope ladders are thrown out and the men climb aboard, dodging enemy fire. But of course, this is only make-believe. National Guard troops are actually in the middle of the Bolden Dam Reservoir, participating in a unique training exercise.
Our purpose in training this way is so that we might perform a mission, say we may have to swim some distance from the water, infiltration into a mission area.
Here we have the men that are simulating a rough weather condition in water, and the boat's capsized. One man gets on, pulls the next one up, holds the rope taut, so each man assists another until all members are back on board.
Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Years ago, all we had was water from wells. Today, we get 20 million gallons a day from the river, and it's already being expanded. The plans have been completed to add 20 more million gallons a day, and I think that will give Montgomery plenty of water to grow on in the future.
The Danleys were given long prison terms in the case. Now their attorneys are attacking the state's obscenity laws. The appeal also says the Danleys' constitutional rights were violated.
We feel the Danleys' freedom of speech rights under the First Amendment to the United States Constitution were violated. Their due process rights under the Fourth and 14th Amendment are violated, and their right of privacy under the Fourth Amendment was also violated. In addition, we feel the statute, the obscenity statute, under which they were convicted is unconstitutional.
What it boils down to is that the search warrant that was executed out there at the Danley home was itself illegal. That when the officers executed it, they went far beyond the scope of what was enumerated in the search warrant. And at the time of trial and in the pretrial motions, the defense team was never allowed to see the informant whose testimony led to this particular search warrant, nor were we ever given that informant that mysterious person's identity.
The appeals court will hear the case October 10th. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.
This is as scared as I've ever been. I know it sounds like I'm pulling a Bear Bryant and we don't have anything, but I have no experienced quarterback, and I only no experienced linebackers, one defensive end that's experienced, and one fullback that is experienced. And we lost 22 seniors last year and had 18 starters, and we had some mighty close games and didn't get to play that many people.
I noticed you were working on your kicking game pretty heavy. Is that important to you?
It sure is. If you lose and win games by your special people and your kicking game, and we spend an awful lot of time with it, at least 30 minutes a day on it, and we got some pretty good kickers. We lost our punter last year, and we're trying to find one of those.
What is the strongest point right now of the Dothan High team?
I guess the strongest point would be our defensive line, and because we've got our 3 starters back there again this year, and the main thing is trying to get one of these younger boys to be a real good backup, and that would basically be our strong point. And I hate to keep saying it, but really, depth on the offensive line scares me to death.
How about some of the teams in your region? Who do you look for to be giving you the most trouble?
Well, I think really Enterprise is going to be the strongest person in our region, and Northview would probably be the second strongest. And Enterprise should win the state again this year. I'm not trying to put the bug on him, but talking to Coach Bill Bacon, he really didn't think he was going to win it last year. He said this year should be his year.
You're not ready to throw in the towel yet, are you?
No, sir. We'll never do that.
First stop, Oxford, Mississippi, where Steve Sloan, one of the country's brightest young coaches, is beginning his 3rd season. But the star this day was not the coach, it was the quarterback. John Forcade fielded questions from the writers as skillfully as he directs the potent Ole Miss offense. Question: how do you think you compare with Joe Namath? Answer: I have better knees. Question: can anybody stop Alabama? Answer: yes, we can. We play them early, hopefully before they get their offense untracked. It'll be our strength, our offense against their strength, their defense. We have a good chance to win. Forcade and company do have talent, but their young defense, maybe 9 starting sophomores this year, will hurt them early in the year. But the Rebels are on the way back with Steve Sloan, and he should enjoy his first winning season at Ole Miss. This is Phil Snow on the SEC Skyriders Tour in Oxford, Mississippi.
Beth Haney qualified for the National Junior Olympics with a 1 minute and 17.89 seconds clocking in the 100-meter breaststroke. That came at the Southeastern Swimming Championships earlier this month. A member of the Montgomery Barracuda Swim Club, Beth trains under team coach Warren Holliday.
Beth is a very talented swimmer in breaststroke, which is her primary stroke. She's a very heavy kicker. She has very strong legs and gets the most power from her stroke comes from her legs through this.
How does someone come this far? Do they work out 2-3 times a day? What do you put them through?
Well, they have to work out a lot. We practice about 5 hours a day, 4 hours in the water, then an hour again on dry land, and we go twice a day.
Does she work with weights at all?
Yes, she does. That's on 3 days a week. We train an hour on the weight machine, and then 3 other days we do dry land exercises and running.
How far do you think Beth Haney can go?
Beth's got a lot of potential to go all the way to senior nationals, possibly a good shot at the Olympic Games.
And you know about coaching in college. You were helping up there at Alabama at one time. Do you think she could possibly earn a college scholarship?
Yes, I do. There are a number of schools that would be very interested in getting Beth's services when she graduates.
How does Beth feel about her future in swimming?
I plan to swim in college. I want to. I don't know. I'll have to wait and see. I don't know what I want to be or what I want to do or anything. So right now, just trying to work on now.
You're thinking about the Nationals for sure coming up. You'll be leaving tomorrow. What are your thoughts?
I'm nervous. I went last year, but this year I'm just trying to, I want to try and place this year in the top 16. I don't know. I have to wait and see what it's going to be like, but I'm very nervous.
You started swimming in this pool a number of years ago, didn't you?
Yeah, when we first moved here, it was about, I don't know, I was about 6 or something. I started my lessons here. It seems kind of funny because everything seems so big. Now it's teeny.
Mississippi State coach Emory Ballard invented the famed wishbone offensive formation. Now he's gone a step farther. He calls it the wing bone. Though he doesn't like to admit it, he has altered his offense to get the ball to Marty McDowell, the talented wide receiver from Mobile, who was a near forgotten quantity last year because State's passing game was so inept. McDowell has been moved into the backfield, most of the time at a wing-back position. That adjustment makes him a running back as well as a pass catcher. Ballard, a slow-talking Texan, puts it better. He says, if we can't throw it, if we can't pitch it, we can dang sure hand it to him. It's a gamble that McDowell will stay healthy, but if that gamble pays, State's inability to score, their big problem last year, could be a thing of the past. And with an already stingy defense, Ballard believes he can challenge for the conference title with Mr. Marty McDowell. This is Phil Snow on the SEC Skywriters Tour in Starkville, Mississippi.
Siegelman says his office could pass the buck on the responsibility for properly alphabetizing the names of candidates by pointing out that the state's election law is vague on who's charged with that responsibility. But instead, the point that Siegelman wants to make is not that his office didn't try and list the names properly, which they did, but instead that this is just another example of how the state's election laws need to be revised. Siegelman says there's little that can be done about this election ballot now, but the issue has prompted him to keep a closer eye on how names are listed in the future. And Siegelman thinks St. John should bear some of the responsibility, saying he's had the name all his life and should have been aware of a possible listing problem. Besides, Siegelman says St. John should have made his complaint long before the ballots were published and the election less than 2 weeks away. Siegelman thinks the only legitimate complaint St. John has is the use of 2 columns for certain races. Again, Siegelman says it's a vague election law that has allowed the practice to become common, but it's a method that some say is confusing to the voters. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Camp Exchange Program and your recent donation of $11,000. The Ethics Commission needs to be given subpoena power. They need to go back to be able to the position they were in, and that's that they could investigate on anonymous complaints. Because if there's one thing that has put public confidence back into government in the state of Alabama, has been the aggressive prosecution of violators of the Alabama Ethics Act. And don't be misled by people sitting in the legislature who've got a vested interest in doing away with the Ethics Act. Ladies and gentlemen,
The meeting, the second since the authority was formed, moves slowly and deliberately in its decision-making. It wants to adopt operating guidelines acceptable to financiers, lenders, and home builders. It says it's anxious to get the paperwork moving so money can be placed in the hands of lenders as soon as possible. The 8-member Housing Authority, including State Finance Director Sid McDonald, is empowered to issue up to $150 million in tax-free bonds and use the proceeds to provide housing loans at interest rates below the prevailing market level. It provides that 70% of the bond issue proceeds be used to finance and purchase new homes, with 30% going to finance the purchase of existing homes. The uncertainty of the nation's economy in the upcoming national election is apparently causing the authority to move slowly in the sale of the bonds to alleviate the drought in home buying in Alabama. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
This is the area where Westinghouse wants to build the plant. It's in between Union Camp and the Prattville dump near the Alabama River. Westinghouse says the plant will bring in more money to the community as well as provide about 400 jobs. SECA members, however, say the plant will be more of a safety hazard than anything else. SECA Representative Julian McPhillips listed 22 reasons for opposing construction of the plant. Among them is the safety and method for disposing its radioactive waste material, security of the plant, and possible accidents.
We're very concerned based on reports we received from scientists and based upon a number of analyses we've made, including information that we've gotten right from their own report.
Westinghouse project manager Frank Sellier says the plant will handle only fuel assemblies and will not involve radioactive materials.
There's absolutely nothing hazardous about this plant. It's a normal production plant, absolutely safe.
If I thought the plant were completely harmless, yes. I'd be in favor of more business, more industry, just like anybody else, but I don't think the plant is completely harmless.
The NRC hearing was to decide which complaints will be heard during the formal hearings later to determine if the plant will be licensed. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
A car's vehicle inspection number, or VIN, is the method law enforcers use to keep track of vehicles. When you buy a new car, you must apply for a title through a designated agent, who is usually the car dealer or a probate judge. Alabama law requires that the agent check the VIN on the title application with the VIN on the car. It's the only method authorities have to be sure the car you say you own is the car in your possession. To get the tag for a new car, you must bring your copy of the title application to the tax assessor's office. The assessor isn't supposed to assess taxes, and the probate office mustn't issue tags without that proof of ownership. Counties are required to forward all title applications and tag registrations to the State Motor Vehicle Division within a day. But an inspection of the state's records from Lowndes County reveals several deviations from procedure. The state has only received Lowndes County tag registrations through June 27th.
We have had problems with Lowndes County forwarding their registration receipts to this office, and in fact, we've had to send our agents down to pick up these receipts at given times.
Any excuse for that?
No excuse that I can see.
Title applications are also missing.
And we had began receiving complaints from lien holders and owners of vehicles that they were not getting their titles. Their liens were not recorded, so we sent someone down to help. There was no violations of law charged at that time because we felt that they did need assistance, and it was possibly something that they could correct with some help of ours, and they have failed to correct this situation.
In addition, workers in the probate office freely admit that they don't compare the VINs on cars with the numbers on title applications as required by law. And an inspection of tag receipts at the courthouse shows that the wife of the tax collector, A050, received a tag for a new car in July, but the state has no record of a title application for the car under the VIN written on the receipt. What's more, the tax assessor says he checked the files after learning authorities are investigating stolen cars in Lowndes County. He says that he found that, contrary to law, the clerk did fill out a tag registration for Mrs. Bell without seeing any proof of ownership. Neither probate judge Harold Hammonds nor tax collector Percy Bell is available for comment. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Officials at the Board of Registrars estimate a little more than 1,000 people will register to vote this month alone. Those who are registering are new voters in the county, but officials say many of them have lived in Montgomery for years.
People who've been here 20 years have just registered to vote. We've had people who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s who have never registered to vote who are now voting, registering to vote rather.
Another large group of new voters include college students in the 18 to 22 age bracket. Jenkins says over the past few years her office has noticed that more people in this age group are registering and requesting absentee ballots. Officials estimate at least 300 to 400 people will come in to register tomorrow. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
We lost a lot of good kids last year, even though we got in the playoffs. And this year, we got some mighty good kids coming back. We got a group of seniors that's as good a group of seniors that I've coached. And if they come through along with the other kids, that we may have a chance to get back to playoffs again next year.
Have you got some experience at the key positions for you?
Yeah, we got some kids that's lettered in our offense and defensive line 3 years, so we really depended on them. Ain't got many of them, but they're going to be some pretty good ones.
And you have an all-state running back.
Yeah, we got a kid that gained about 1,100 yards last year and about 16 touchdowns, and he's come in at about 200 pounds this year and still got his speed, so we expecting big things out of him too.
What about your schedule this year? Who do you see as your toughest opposition?
Well, it's going to be 10 games this year. We're going to play them from week to week. Of course, Sampson was a 2A team last year that moved down to our area to 1A. They're going to be pretty tough, and Montgomery Academy is always tough. But there's just the whole schedule that we play is going to be a lot tougher than we played last year.
Is Houston Academy going to have to run the ball or pass the ball, a little bit of both to win this year?
Well, we got that good running back, so we're going to let him tote it as long as he can, but we're going to take the pressure off of him. We're going to try to throw and got some more backs too that's capable of running the ball.
How about practice? How's it been going? Are you happy with the situation so far?
It's been hard. It's been tough on them, but most of the kids knew it was going to be tough, so they came in half decent shape. So we are ahead of a little bit, I believe, of the heat right now.
All right, you can get up now. I'm used to it.
I don't know about the strong points, but I know about a lot of weakness.
Coaches always say that, don't they?
Well, we experience a little bit on the defensive line. We may not be as experienced in the secondary as we'd like to be, but I hope that have some advantage with the line there. But our secondary, we lost a couple guys, and we got to go with some news there.
New head coach Jerry Stovall, plucked from the LSU fundraising department after the tragic death of Coach Bo Ryan, is not unlike a good Baptist preacher. He's selling enthusiasm down here in the Bayou country, and his speaking ability is far superior to any first-year head coach we've ever heard. He has organized his staff, he has changed the offense, and he has named the defensive unit the Bandits. That's a throwback to the Chinese Bandits of LSU fame in the late 50s. His untested offense and a comparatively small defensive unit will make it difficult to win big against teams like Florida State, Auburn, Alabama, Ole Miss, and Tulane. But Stovall is taking that long-range view. He's looking for fiercely competitive, bad-humored players like those of the good old days when they called Tiger Stadium the worst place in the country to visit on a Saturday night. And as good a salesman as the former LSU All-American and All-Pro player is, don't sell him short. This is Phil Snow reporting from Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
The company has met the preconditions of the special rules and submit, if we may, Your Honor, start with there's going the computation. Exhibit 2, the calculation, and probably best be explained by starting at exhibit September. If these could be marked up.
They are so marked.
Represent kilowatt hours that have actually been billed kilowatt hours to spread the.
The Supreme Court says the Public Service Commission order granting the power company the rate increase was not based on evidence presented at a hearing on the utilities petition. Last year, the power company received a three-step 22.5% rate increase, 5% in July and 8% in January. The commission then made an emergency increase of 9.5% permanent. The court says the PSC has no legal authority to grant rate increases by steps. It returned the case back to the commission with instructions to issue another one based on evidence at the hearings.
From what the Supreme Court said will dictate how long it will take us to come out with a compliance with their order.
The Public Service Commission's order was designed to provide Alabama Power with an 11.7% return on its common equity. But the Supreme Court says there was no evidence to support that. Alabama Power says it's pleased with the court's decision. It says the court apparently recognized the political consideration given in the rate case and not the evidence. The utility has a current rate hike request on appeal with the Supreme Court to collect a full $122 million under bond. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
The biggest increases are in poultry and pork items. These prices had been decreasing for many months, but the weather cut supplies enough to create higher prices, and it looks like they'll continue to be high for quite a while.
The stress from the drought and heat, primarily in the western states, but I actually here in Alabama also, was probably the main factor as far as the price increase.
Fruit and vegetable prices increased about 5% as the summer heat took its toll. However, a survey of fresh produce prices shows a decrease, and shoppers can find special bargains in farmers markets for corn, squash, and other items. The prices in the survey of retail food items represents a sampling of 50 stores in the state. The average price of pork chops is $1.92 a pound, ground beef $1.61, whole fryers 56 cents a pound, half a gallon of milk is 51 cents, and a pound of butter is 70 cents. While shoppers are paying more at the grocery store, farmers are too. Production costs have increased faster than farm prices. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
It was a year ago that 2 longtime workers in the Lowndes County Probate Office quit their jobs. Since then, state officials have complained that they haven't received license plate registration receipts promptly, and several citizens have complained they never got their new car titles after applying at the probate office. Probate clerk Virginia Crook says she sends tag receipts and title applications monthly, that no one told her they were to be sent the next business day. She says yesterday she began checking vehicle identification numbers on title applications with those on the car. And she says owners and banks who complained they never received titles often gave her incorrect addresses when they applied. She and the probate judge say the county is too poor to hire enough people to double-check all tag registration forms. Ms. Crook says she's never been told to ask for proof of ownership when issuing a new tag and claims the tax assessor is supposed to do that. So she says she never asked to see proof of ownership when tax collector Percy Bell got tags for a car and a van in July. The state has no record of the Bells' car having a title, and Ms. Crook says they never applied for one in the probate office. Bell won't comment. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News, Hayneville.
Local educator Dr. Bill Cook told the group that the greatest shortage facing this country is the lack of leadership. He says the teachers have the opportunity to mold and influence their students, but all too often students are lacking in self-worth. Cook says the teachers need to tell their students that failure is a part of excellence, that they can only achieve success through failure. Former school superintendent Silas Garrett also addressed the group, challenging the teachers to put their best foot forward by being leaders and salesmen in their profession. He says despite many knockdowns, the teachers are doing a fine job and should let the parents and others in the community know this. Garrett says next year will be a tough year because of proration. He asked all of them to work with new school superintendent Henry Adair to work up a new budget. He says the Montgomery system should be able to survive the rough year ahead if they all stick together. Garrett will stay with the school system as a consultant until the end of December. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
The abolition of the Department of Energy, I think, is the most direct and strongest step we can take toward eliminating the possibility of war with Russia. That war with Russia is approaching, in my view, because of our dependence upon Persian Gulf oil, and Jimmy Carter has put in registration for the draft specifically to provide the people to have a military response to the Russians in the Persian Gulf. And the reason that we're pushing toward new bases in the Persian Gulf and bigger military spending is because we're dependent upon Persian Gulf oil. And I want to abolish the Department of Energy to solve our energy problems at home.
Henry Adair is no stranger when it comes to the day-to-day operation and needs of the Montgomery County Public Schools. For almost 25 years, he's worked in the Montgomery system as a teacher, assistant principal, and principal at Lanier High School, and more recently as associate superintendent, a job he's held for the past 8 years. During that time, he was second in command to former superintendent Silas Garrett, whose retirement was effective this past week. In looking forward to this new school year, Adair says he has several priorities, one of which is to continue to upgrade the basic instructional program.
We've noticed that our California achievement tests the results of those tests this year have actually been above the national norms. We have been able to accredit all of our elementary and junior high schools. One of our goals would be certainly to continue the accreditation of our schools, because this results in a better educational climate for boys and girls, and as a result will result in a better student coming out of school.
Adair says he also wants to increase school attendance, continue the decline in the dropout rate, and continue improvements in both vocational and special education. Another priority is to continue in-service programs and workshops for teachers, administrators, and classified personnel. One problem which the system is sure to face this year is that of funding. Officials are predicting double-digit proration of the state Special Education Trust Fund. Some school officials say they'll have a hard time keeping the schools open this year, but Adair says he hopes it won't come to that in Montgomery County.
We are, making every effort to conserve. We are going into this school year recognizing that we possibly will have financial problems, and we're going to make every effort as we plan our budget for this school year to conserve in every manner possible.
Adair says he's very anxious to get the school year underway and hopes to establish a close working relationship with the parents, teachers, and the community. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
The Danley case was first made public. Reports of pornographic pictures allegedly of Johnny and Dorothy Danley and their children shocked this community, and citizens in Montgomery were enraged by those reports and charges of alleged child molestation by the Danleys of their own kids. Attorneys Walter Chandler and Paul Cooper will conduct the appeal. Cooper says the state's obscenity laws are in question in the Danley case.
In regard to obscenity statutes, have laid out certain procedural due process requirements and safeguards before I can enter or seize obscene material. And some of our research has pointed out that the Supreme Court has dictated that a search warrant, number one, is necessary, and then a post-seizure hearing on whether the material seized is obscene should be made available to the defendants in this case. In this case, the statute under which they were indicted and also convicted did not provide for a search warrant which spells out with specificity what it is that is obscene. Secondly, it did not provide for a post-seizure hearing. Now, there are two other obscenity statutes on the books in the state of Alabama. They were passed during the same legislative session. They are Division I and Division II of the Alabama laws on obscenity. And both those divisions of the laws, those two separate statutes, provide for a mandatory search warrant, number one. Number two, a post-seizure hearing. The statute under which the Danleys were convicted does not provide for a search warrant, doesn't make it mandatory, and does not provide a post-seizure type hearing. In addition, the two other statutes which I referred to require some type of specific intent in the statute. This statute, part of it, some of the sections refer to an intent to disseminate, whereas the particular section under which the Danleys were convicted has no reference whatsoever to a specific intent to disseminate. Thirdly, we feel that this statute